Welcome to Hoshiai no Sora episode 6. We're doing this at a weird time, actually. It was Friday morning. I usually do these either on Friday evenings or Saturday mornings and put them out on Sunday, but we're here. And I will be eating some breakfast. It's just an omelet with guac. Healthy breakfast in the morning while we watch some healthy anime. Okay, let's get started.
けど男子だけでも60人くらいいるし、1年生は声出し要員が役目だしね。
Couple things. Since I always forget. Okay. Since I didn't get to look at last week's episode, it was delayed or whatever. There was some complication regarding that. So this manager is like confirmed 100% gay. They put in a little clue that he's uncomfortable with boys being undressed around him, which I think is fairly normal when you're kind of coming to terms with your sexuality, that it's something that you would consider kind of being uncomfortable about. So that's that, as well as for this Misaki thing. We saw the whole like Maki dealing with his dad arc last time. I thought it was a little bit over dramatic in the way that they were like, if you don't leave, we're going to kill you. Maybe you don't want to put that in those terms to a drifter of that kind. Maybe you want to be more like amicable and be like, hey, why do you think doing this is okay? And we also got a little bit more info about how Japan treats the parent-child relationship, because he's able to just go to whatever, home office or whatever that lists their address, and he can get it no matter what, just because he's Maki's biological father. But it doesn't work like that over here. You need some kind of signed consent form. Nobody's going to tell you shit about anyone if they're even close to being not related to you. So if your wife files a divorce and you don't have custody anymore, you're not going to get any information at all. That's probably for the safety of everyone involved, and we see why that's the case, because he's able to routinely track them down, and his mom doesn't really put a stop to things, I suppose, because she doesn't know what's going on behind the scenes between him and Maki. And it's just one of those things where you wonder if that's really a good law to have in the first place, because it allows someone like him to just chase down this 14-year-old boy to extort him for money that Maki says they don't really have to spare. And you can see that she was putting like 4 or 5 10,000 yen notes in there, which is a significant amount of money. That's like a monthly salary for pretty much anyone else. And he just takes it and leaves, and he comes back routinely to get it all the time. It's just these laws, and this anime's focus on things that we don't normally talk about is kind of interesting. There's also like, we got to look into the president's life, the president of the school, the one who was dancing in the ED, if you've seen that, and she's kind of drawn as like a more like a what you would call like a plus size person, I guess, which is not something that you really see in anime a lot. Normally, there was a lot of talk about this when that Do You Even Lift anime came out, and I think Pantsu Party, who's like Digi's significant other, made a video about how anime has a problem talking about weight, especially when it relates to women. So it's kind of interesting to see how they're going to treat that character, because clearly they've made a creative choice to draw her as someone who's overweight. And I wonder how they're going to deal with that going forward, because if they do it in a nuanced way, it will be nice, just like they're doing with everything else in this anime. So that was last episode. Now let's continue.
あんな奴らじゃウォーミングアップにもならないね。ストレッチぐらいだ。
So like the analogous situation to this in ping pong would be when Peko and Smile first go to that big academy on the hill, because they saw them play in the tennis hall and they're like, hey, you guys are good, come over here and play. But it's kind of a reverse situation in that this time it's the underdogs who are seeking out the challenge, as not something that they usually do. In fact, even the fact that they're making an effort is somewhat surprising to everyone else in the school. They think that they're just messing around, or like they just don't want to be put out of existence. But seeing from what they did last episode, they seem like genuinely actually interested in the sport of soft tennis, which I guess takes some real motivation to get interested in, because they haven't been doing anything regarding it before. We know Katsuragi Maki was like, hey, how have you guys not done anything in 2 years? And they're playing against the second years of this middle school, who are like an elite soft tennis school, which I think is used, like they use that term elite soft tennis school just to mess with us, because I don't think there are actually elite soft tennis schools. Elite table tennis schools, sure, ping pong, very popular sport, especially in Asia, because they've been so dominant. Tennis schools, I believe, but soft tennis schools, I don't know. And I think that's part of like the absurdity of certain situations in this anime. And I've said this before, but soft tennis is their way of telling us that this isn't really about the sports, and I agree. which then leads us back to another thing that I missed in last episode, which is Futsu Rintaro. Turns out he's adopted, and he has two loving parents, but they're not his biological parents. So he's kind of depressed about that. And Toma's like, "You idiot, at least you have parents that love you. My mom can't stand the sight of me." And he's like, "Don't tell Maki this, he'll actually murder you." Because I thought that was a really cool interaction, because you know that these interactions actually take place in schools. You've had friends who've had problems before, and they've told you their problems, and you talk it through with them, and you have your own problems, and you tell them, and that exchange of kind of common or grievances and like the airing of things and finding ways to work through it and like understanding each other is obviously a big part of friendship. And I think that's what this anime is really about, is like the concept of having a friendship built through some activity, and doesn't really matter what activity it is. That's why we're playing soft tennis. I just think that's like an interesting way that this show is working through that, and I didn't even expect that we would get as much information about the characters as we did end up getting, but it's just an interesting way to go about things by framing it in the sort of normal package of a sports anime that we usually take to mean something else, but in this time it's like a character interaction drama. It's pretty interesting.
避けよロブ上げられたらボレーもできないよお前も少しは走ればいいだろ動いてるだろ
They're playing so well, they're causing the Minami or Misaki people to argue amongst themselves. This is great. So I thought there would be like a big, you know, when you normally have a sports anime where an underdog is going up against an elite, usually they get clobbered for like 2 or 3 sets and they come back at the very end to win. But of course, this anime is anything but traditional. They have done something completely different, which is it's now the underdogs that are taking the lead. They've scored the first couple of points, and the other people are starting to get worried, because when you're an elite or whatever, your whole pride depends on your status and to be able to win and everything. And these guys have nothing to lose. They're complete underdogs. They've come into enemy territory. And these two going up first, they're going to get the most blame if they end up losing, even if other people end up losing, because you went first. It's just the nature of things. Whoever does worst first gets blamed. That's how it works. And now they've taken the lead. Okay, let's see. Soft tennis. I mean, I don't care about soft tennis at all, but this is pretty interesting.
おいおいファーストサーブにスライスかけてんのかよそんなことできんのか
This is pretty interesting because if you watch ping pong, or if you've actually watched ping pong like people play it, there's a pretty like distinct style variation between someone who chops a lot, a chopper, or just someone who plays straight up with speed. So like a normal person would like try to slam for the corners and make it so that you can't return, and a chopper just plays like way back from the table and just puts so much spin on it that it's really hard for you to predict what kind of spin is going to be on it, and makes it hard to hit that way. I guess with the nature of the soft tennis ball, it's more, more susceptible to spin variations, so they're getting beat that way. Really interesting. It's like a combination of table tennis and real tennis. It's weird. I've never heard of the sport before.
負けは負け進歩できる可能性のある負けは単なる負けじゃないんだよね
It's interesting because the buy-in from the other members of the tennis club has been actually insane. Like the first episode, they were completely antagonistic. Second episode, kind of grudgingly accepting. They got into that fight and everything. But since then, their buy-in has been 100%. They've done all the drills that a complete newbie has written for them. They just listened to the pairs that he made and were like, these pairs must mean something. Let's figure out what they actually mean. You don't normally get this kind of buy-in. I wonder if they're going to kind of make some kind of like, but what you tell us isn't working, we keep losing type twist on this, like halfway through the show. That would be interesting, because if you've ever tried like coaching anything before, you know that kids get really put off when whatever you tell them isn't working, and they don't want to believe that it's because of something that just, there's so many factors to performance at the end of the day that it's hard to tell what exactly caused it, but they get kind of worried that you're telling them the wrong thing or whatever, and kind of leads to like this cognitive dissonance where they can't get better because they're stuck on something else. I wonder if we're going to get some kind of look into that, because that would be kind of interesting. But I acknowledge this anime is not about the sports, so we likely won't, but I'm fine with that. This is a pretty realistic way to approach this whole like underdog versus elite scenario. So they've managed to take a game each time they played, but they just get wiped out because they don't know what to do after that. It's kind of like a dog chasing a car. The dog doesn't really think it's going to catch it. Wouldn't really know what to do if it did catch it. And these guys are like, we need to win this one game. And after they win the one game, they're like, okay, we did it. And they kind of like relax mentally, even if it's subconscious for like a second. And then they just get blown out because the other pair doesn't lose focus at all. Because even if they had taken the first game, they would have just kept going anyway because they're used to playing big games like this. They're not really phased by things. We kind of saw a preview of this in the first match when they were like, it's okay, we lost the game, but just keep your focus. Let's keep going. And that's kind of one of the things that if you watch like an elite sports player, they don't get discouraged by their failures. They just forget about it and move on because they know that they've put in the time and the practice and that eventually they'll start doing good again. That's kind of what's missing from the Shijo Minami team here. Yo, that was pretty funny. I know this is not like dirty play or whatever, but if you've read Ippo at all, you know that one of the things that amateur boxers have a hard time dealing with in the pro ring is that the pros just cheat, like blatantly cheat, like they'll headbutt you and hit you with an elbow or whatever, and that's not really treated as something that just needs to be eliminated from the sport. They just kind of accept it as a reality of what'll happen when the cost of losing is so high. I just thought it was funny that these guys are like, oh, you're gonna win, huh? Okay, take this. And they just crush the other dude's hand. That's pretty funny.
田中落ち着け。
分かってる。あんなのにごまかされるか。
This is the equivalent of someone yelling at you when you're trying to shoot in basketball. If you've played pickup basketball before, I know what happens here a lot when I do it is whenever someone doesn't want to play defense, but they want to pretend like they're playing defense, they'll just go up to you and clap in your face as you shoot. And if that bothers you and you miss, they'll keep doing it. So to prove that they shouldn't do it anymore, you have to make the shot when they do that, which is what these guys haven't done yet. They're just letting complete nonsense get to them. They're getting played out by someone who's just yelling in their face, and it just snaps your mental focus that much. And if you've, like, to continue with this basketball analogy, if you've seen like players warm up before a match, maybe in the NBA or whatever, I know Kevin Durant used to do this. When he shoots, he like take the position for the shot, and then his trainer will like come and slap him up just to simulate the kind of contact that would happen in a real game, because if you're just shooting at entirely a comfortable pace for you, that's not really a realistic scenario. And he's practiced that so much that he doesn't really need to do it anymore. So just before a game, it's better to get reps in where he's just getting hit for no reason because it's more realistic to what would happen in a game. I just thought it was funny because pros do practice this whole mental focus thing. But middle schoolers, you know, they're not used to it yet.
マキ君、トーマ君、頑張れ。
いいとこ見せてよ。
落ち着いて。
Calling it now, everyone else lost 3-1. They're going to lose 3-2. It's going to be close, but they're going to lose 3-2 is what I'm calling it. I think that'll be like the best way to finish this episode off. Let's see what happens. Okay, well that was episode 6 of Hoshiai no Sora. I don't know why it got delayed a week. Episode 5, I mean. This episode came right on time. I wonder if they're having production problems already. I know that this studio normally doesn't do something this ambitious, and this director is like really focused on making this a really good anime because he basically came out of retirement to make this. So I wonder if there's some like extra... If you've seen Shirobako, you know what I'm talking about. Like, hey, let's redo this cut. This doesn't feel right. Can we do something else? Maybe there's something of that going on there because it is like his brainchild. He did everything, story, direction, storyboard, everything. But speculation aside, this show is really good. Like, this show just consistently delivers on what it promised it would. And this episode was more of like a let's test out the waters type episode. This wasn't really like a super character development episode. That was more last episode. But this episode, we got more a look into like how the pair dynamics work, how they actually stack up against an elite school in soft tennis, and like where they are now given that we're like almost halfway into the show. And they've made improvement. They have definitely made improvement, but of course there's a long way to go because, as we know, there's levels to this stuff. And it's good to just get that out there in the very beginning to know that we're not watching some kind of unrealistic anime where things just magically get better, or we develop some kind of magical new ability that'll take us to that next level without that much effort, really. Because at the end of the day, it's all about how much time you put in, and they're really showing us that. They're like, we're good now because we tried a little bit, but we'd be better if we tried more. And I think that's a good lesson to end on with an episode like this. So that's it for episode 6 of Stars Align, or Hoshiai no Sora, whatever you want to call it. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.